there, guys, what is up? And welcome to the third and final installment of the Talking Crapper Mania WrestleMania week specials. And this is over on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our previous parts. Part 1 is also on YouTube. I'm sure we'll put the video somewhere. And part 2 was over on Facebook. We will leave the link to the Facebook playlist in the description. And on this episode, we're going to be joined by guests Sam DeFrain, Jack Walker, and the heavyweight Lewis Barrett. I'm joined, of course, by Jay Josh Port, everyone, and we're going to delve straight in, really, and we're going to be talking about the Attitude Era. That's what I was discussing with Sam. So who is kind of your favourite, I know it's a bit before your time, who is your favourite Attitude Era star?
Oh, there's so many to choose from. I'm not going to go with one person.
Okay.
I'm going to go with a tag team.
Yeah, I think I know
obviously.
You're going to say.
It's not the Hardys.
Oh, it's not the Hardys?
No.
Okay. Is it Edge and Christian?
No, it was actually no one that was involved in a triple threat ladder or triple threat TLC match. Although, Jeff, the Hardy Boys are my favourite of all time in WWE, DX were my favourite Attitude Era tag team.
Yeah, I mean, we did an episode on DX very early on, didn't we?
We did.
The DX versus the NWO episode we did. We checked that out as well, and I think ultimately we did lean that the NWO just beat them in terms of a stable, but DX definitely for WWE is like the bar really for stables, and they have much success, and I think that's something definitely. I was a fan. And, still am a fan, really, of Triple H. I think he did a great job towards the latter part of the Attitude Era, which obviously helped set the company up for what was to become the Ruthless Aggression Era. And you can't really think of early 2000s and World Championships without thinking about Triple H. And, it all started with the Attitude Era, really, didn't it? Because that's when he became the game and when he became at the start of the man who's become the 14-time World Champion. And I caught up with Sam DeFrain to discuss some of the Attitude Era moments. Here's what we had to say. Okay, thanks for joining us. I'm joined by Sam DeFrain now, and we're going to discuss everything about the Attitude Era, of of WrestleManias, that is. I know you're a big fan. That's obviously when a lot of people got into the business, a lot of these iconic moments that we're going to discuss. So of the Attitude Era moments, I guess we're going to have to discuss, obviously, Rock and Austin. There are two matches taking place, one at Mania 15, the other obviously at WrestleMania 17. Those were the two kind of massive matches. Were those matches that you were drawn to, straight away?
Definitely Rock and Austin in 15, because they had that massive build-up with the Deadly Games.
Yeah.
When The Rock first won the title, when they screwed over Mankind, and then you had the biggest Raw moment ever where Mankind won the title, and then they had the to and fro with Mankind and The Rock winning the title, and it was the big deal, like Rock versus Austin, because you had Austin McMahon rivalry leading up to it, and then obviously had McMahon win the Rumble by throwing Austin over the top. And then it led to the one and only St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which obviously introduced Paul White for the very first time.
Yeah,
when he threw Austin through the cage to win the match. And it was like there was a build up all the way from Survivor Series to that point. So when the actual match came, I mean, the rest of the card on that Mania, I mean, there were some good matches, some not so good. As I said to you before, like moments with the gobbledygook versus Kane and stuff like that. Silly, but they were there. But no, definitely Austin versus The Rock, and then that big pop for when Austin finally retained the title, because the whole point where McMahon said you'll never be the WWF champion ever again, you'll never have it again, and it was this great big build up to him getting it back at Mania and getting his own back on McMahon. So yeah, definitely up there as one of the top Mania moments, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, the WrestleMania 17 was almost a bit like what fans a bit older than us, what WrestleMania kind of 7 and 8 were, where it was like the final kind of hurrah for a lot of the top stars of the time. Because obviously you know, obviously, even though, I mean, Stone Cold and The Rock, they've had a couple of Mania matches following that. It was very much still the new generation came in after that and obviously created new moments. But in terms of Attitude Era, talked about some fun moments there. One that sticks out for me is the Raven, Kane, and Big Show hardcore match. Just for so much stuff they did with that, which still was talked about today, in particular the golf cart. Like, how crazy was that? And even at WrestleMania when they had the hardcore title defending, like, I think was it like a battle royal or something, or with the Hollies, the Holly cousins, and
yeah.
the other
I think
people.
it was like, I think, was it like a battle royal? Was it like a almost like an Iron Man, but with like multiple people? And I think
it was a scramble. I think it was a scramble because it was like a 15-minute time limit, and so you had to pin whoever pinned last was the champion. You know, but they messed up the finish.
Winner, yeah. And how many times the belt changed hands that one night?
Yeah.
And little Houdini himself, Holly Houdini, got away with the belt at the end.
Yeah.
I used to love Crash Holly for that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the Attitude Era title changes were phenomenal. Like, you know, definitely like with himself, Al Snow, you know, so many other people like that. With that belt.
Well, you know, like one of the biggest ones that people overlook is at WrestleMania 2000, they had the triangle tag ladder match between Dudley's Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys, and obviously that gave birth to what would then be TLC and like one of the best like tag team divisions of all time, and that happened at WrestleMania 2000. You know, the WrestleMania with the weird number, with a fatal four-way for the final match.
Yeah, so obviously WrestleMania 2000 famous for only having one singles match, but it was a cat fight between Terry Runnels and the Cat, with Val Venus as guest referee. Every other match was either a four-way or a triple threat or a tag or whatever. So it's quite an insane show to kind of sit and watch. I know you're a fan of another match, I think, for the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah, it was Kurt Angle had both the Intercontinental and the European title.
Yeah,
and he was doing that whole phase of I can't be beaten, and I'm the Euro Continental Champion. And he got pinned twice, once by Chris Benoit and the other time by Chris Jericho to lose both belts. And then obviously Kurt Angle would then get the push that year for the WWF title. But that was quite an interesting one because everyone was banking on when Kurt Angle was actually going to lose. Because when he lost to Taz, they did the whole stipulation of, oh, it was an illegal choke. I didn't really lose. Lose. And then he got both the belts. And then when he got beat by Chris, because the Radicals had just like Jericho had been signed, the Radicals had been signed. So like a lot of WCW talent was jumping ship over to WWF. And so it was like really good because we saw like Perry Saturn, Dave Malenko, Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero sort of like doing what they did best, like back in WCW, but obviously they're bringing it over to WWF. So that was a really, really interesting match.
I think 2000 as a whole for both companies was a crazy year though. Obviously, WCW 2000 known for being kind of notoriously bad, but in a so bad it's good kind of way, I guess. But WWF, you know, too, like it was a crazy year that year. And obviously building up to obviously WrestleMania 17 the next year, where, like you say, the amount of talent they had accrued by that point. Because wasn't the deal for WCW only finalised, wasn't like a week before, wasn't it? Because they used it as part of the Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon match. And that took place at that WrestleMania too.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember what show it was on when they had like I think it was on Raw, and they had the live feed from both Raw and Nitro, and it was Vince was on Raw and Shane was on Nitro, and they were doing like a double feed, saying, you know, we now own WCW, and then obviously that was sort of the after the invasion angle, that was sort of the end of the Attitude Era and the beginning of the Ruthless Aggression Era. But going back to some really classic moments, we were talking about Austin. I remember, so obviously you had Austin versus Shawn Michaels, title, with Mike Tyson as the enforcer, and the referee, which was pretty cool seeing old Tyson getting in the ring there. And before that, it was one of my favourite matches was Bret Hart versus Austin in the submission match.
Yeah, WrestleMania 13. Wasn't even the main event either, was it? That one wasn't even the main event, was it?
No, that wasn't. That one was on a main event. Because I think he was feuding with Bret because I think he was feuding with the Hart Foundation in general.
Yeah.
Because he did feud with Owen Hart for a period, but then he was like really feuding with Bret, and that was sort of them giving Austin his big push. And then obviously when he fought Shawn Michaels and took the title, obviously that cemented him as like the top tier talent for the Attitude Era.
Well, yeah, when you think about Stone Cold's WrestleMania run, like it was Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, took The Rock twice, and then Scott Hall. And then The Rock again, The Rock three times, and Scott Hall kind of in the middle of all that, WrestleMania 18. But, it was, let's be honest, like Hall of Famers that he faced at WrestleMania, and obviously himself being a Hall of Famer. And he's like, I think he's just synonymous with his Attitude Era manias, isn't he, really? But something that's interesting that comes up, because the first mention of it actually happens at WrestleMania 18. Now it's a little bit just at the end of the Attitude Era, clinging onto it, is the streak becoming a thing. Because the first time they actually acknowledged it was like WrestleMania 18 when Taker fought Flair, and that was his 10th victory at WrestleMania. And obviously Taker at the start of the Attitude Era manias, he faced obviously Sid at WrestleMania 13 to win the championship on that occasion. But it's safe to say that at that time, because there was so much going on, the bigger picture of things, the streak wasn't what it would become later on. But do you want it that they had like 10 years of someone winning without them knowing? But it is still just an amazing record to have. And one of the matches he had back then, the match that they seemed to have raised when they did the Triple H and Undertaker matches later on, was the match against Triple H at WrestleMania 17. Which was a wild brawl of a match. It went absolutely everywhere. That's something the Attitude was famous for, though, wasn't it? Once the referee went down, or once they got into the crowd, they could go there for about 15, 20 minutes.
In the Attitude Era, I don't think matches ever stayed in the ring. We always used to say, in the Attitude Era, watch out Spanish announce table, because someone's going through it every week. Yeah. Someone was going through the Spanish announce table.
So in terms of Attitude Era at WrestleManias, apart from obviously Stone Cold and The Rock, because that's kind of a cop out of this time, what is your favourite match from them? Apart from that,
I'm definitely going to say the Triangle tag team ladder match between Hardy's, Dudley's, and Edge and Christian has got to be one of my favourite WrestleMania Attitude Era matches.
You're right. I think because it's in that WrestleMania 2000, which it isn't obviously at the top echelon, I think, of manias. It obviously gets overlooked, and obviously for the one the next year they did obviously improved upon it, tenfold to the limit. But it's still, I think it is still, controversial. I think it's still the bar in terms of a ladder match. Once you've seen that spear off the ladder, my favourite quote from that is people asking Edge and Jeff Hardy for years afterwards, like, "Oh, when you practiced it beforehand, like what happened?" And Edge is just like, "You think you practiced that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do you think you practice just going up to, to 20 foot in the air and just getting speared? You don't do that more than once. That was a one and done kind of thing. But definitely that image, I think, for ladder matches is where they all need to be. But look, yeah, thanks for that, Sam. And yeah, we will get back to me and Josh in the future. Yeah, thanks, Sam, for that chat. And now we're going to move on to talking for our next interview with Jack Walker. We're going to talk about something which I know a lot of fans miss at WrestleMania, and that is the Money in the Bank ladder match. Now, of course, these took place between WrestleManias 21 and 26 before it became a pay-per-view of its own right in 2010. I can't believe it's been over 10 years now since the first Money in the Bank pay-per-view took place. But they haven't taken place at Mania since then, though. And I think it's quite a shame. What do you think? Do you miss that Mania?
I do, but at the same time, I think it's a type of match like TLC that does kind of need its own pay-per-view. I think the only match type that doesn't need its own pay-per-view, I think, is Extreme Rules.
I don't like Hell in a Cell either.
I like Hell in a Cell, but again, I don't think it needs its own pay-per-view. I miss No Way Out.
Yeah.
No Way Out that had every type of cage match in it, including Elimination Chamber. But I do think Money in the Bank does need its own pay-per-view. So I as much as I miss some of the moments it had at Mania, I don't miss it at Mania.
Oh, I guess it was since then they've had like the IC title ladder matches as well at WrestleMania, and they've had some extreme matches, Hell in a Cell, that kind of stuff. So they've kind of tick that criteria. And if you've got Shane McMahon win the jump off stuff, I guess that's always helpful too. Of the first WrestleMania Money in the Bank ladder matches, then who was your favorite winner out of them? So your options are obviously Edge, RVD, Mr. Kennedy, CM Punk, or Jack Swagger.
It's a strong tie between Mr. Kennedy and CM Punk. CM Punk was one of my favorites very early on when I was watching wrestling. But Mr. Kennedy, I don't know why. Although he was mainly a mid-carder, there was the odd moment where he went up with the big boys in the main event. I think I'm going to go with CM Punk, my favorite winner. Mr. Kennedy has my favorite moment.
Okay.
Because there's this one moment in the Mr. Kennedy Money in the Bank match where I believe it was him and Shelton Benjamin pushed someone else from the top of a ladder. And the face that he had on him is forever ingrained in my brain. Because you could tell he was like, oh, that looked bad.
For me, one of my favourite moments was when Ric Flair got superplexed off the top and just went to the back for the remainder of the match. I just always love that moment. The fact they superplex and then just Flair just basically,
just like, no, I'm done.
But I think, CM Punk was my favourite winner. Because I associate the winners with the cash-ins too. I always loved the fact that CM Punk was able to win it as a babyface 2 years in a row. And the second time, he was able to turn villain with the briefcase, which is very, very, very rare about this. But anyway, Money in the Bank was a big part of these WrestleManias in the early 2000s, I think. And now we're linking into Jack Walker talking about WrestleManias in the 2000s. Okay, so Jack, thanks for joining us. Welcome back again to Talking Crap. And we're going to discuss some of the kind of 2000s or Ruthless Aggression era editions of WrestleMania. I understand you got a favourite, or your first WrestleMania is also your favourite. What number WrestleMania is that? Just to make everyone feel really old.
That is WrestleMania 22.
Yep, you heard that. Not WrestleMania 2. There's another 2 on the back of that. So 22 then. Kind of an under appreciated WrestleMania, I think, in terms of definitely that period. So what is it about 22 that does it for you?
I think it was because it's my earliest memory of wrestling to a live extent. I remember my first ever match, but I'm pretty sure that was a few years before I watched it. But I got into wrestling about the Royal Rumble time of just turned 2006. But I was 6, so I never got to stay up and watch it. So I'd have to watch it on the internet, old school YouTube. WrestleMania 22, I watched it the night after in the morning. Back in the day when they put pay-per-views on repeat, but in 7 a.m.
Yeah.
When they cut out all the violence.
Yeah.
So I remember watching WrestleMania 22. Like I say, it was completely different to how I watch it now because the Edge Mick Foley match was cut. That wasn't even in the repeats.
I can imagine because of the fire.
Yeah. And I think they cut out the Playboy match as well for obvious reasons.
So what match from that was your favourite then out of WrestleMania 22?
Edge and Mick Foley. That match kind of just. I remember watching it a few months after. I used to watch it on repeat, this pay-per-view. I remember watching it one time when I was kind of understood wrestling a bit more. Understood that it wasn't real, and so when you're 6, you believe that Triple H is the worst person ever. But then when you rewatch it a few times, you understand kind of a bit more about it. But I remember watching the Edge Mick Foley, and every time I watched it, I just appreciated it much more. Also, you've got the Money in the Bank where Rob Van Dam won. At the time, Rob Van Dam and Edge are my 2 favourite wrestlers at the time.
They both won.
And they both won. And both in in my opinion, the best Money in the Bank match there's been. I think that match has and also it was the main event was John Cena versus Triple H, which I just don't think gets the appreciation that it gets.
I think it gets overlooked because it was that period where Triple H was just the main event of everything, and John Cena was too.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where it's a bit like, I can see why fans turn on it a little bit.
Looking back, I can understand why. Now knowing that from 2004 to 2007-ish, every pay-per-view was Triple H beating somebody.
Yeah, on the most
And
part.
at the time, it was great for me. But looking back, I understand why. It's just another one of them matches where it's really slow, and then suddenly 8 finishes and then it's over.
I mean, obviously Triple H and Cena, in terms of this kind of era we're talking about, they dominated the main event scenes and like a lot of the big matches, going throughout the decade. So interesting you mentioned Edge there, because Edge had a little streak of his own going, didn't he, at WrestleMania, where he was undefeated for a few years, until obviously he met the king of undefeated streaks himself, the Undertaker. Streak really came into its own during this period, I'd say. Like the streak match that he had, but 22 was against Mark Henry, wasn't it? Was it 23?
Yeah, it was a casket match.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
It was my first ever time seeing Undertaker that I can remember. And for me, I didn't understand it. It wasn't until probably about 3 years later till I really understood how good Undertaker was.
Yeah,
if
really
you ask 6-year-old, 7-year-old Jack, I didn't like him. He was boring. He was slow. That kind of stuff. Especially in that match. That match wasn't his best.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. He's had worse streak matches though. Let's be real. Giant Gonzalez and Jimmy Snuka, say hello.
It was a good match for what it was.
But then I think by the time you got 24, you're getting to, well, 23 obviously was against Batista, 24 against Edge, then the 2 against Shawn Michaels, and then the 2 against Triple H. Undertaker really stepped up, and the streak became, I would almost say, equal to or even above a world championship. It was the fact he went to WrestleMania to see the WWE
100%.
Championship and the streak being defended.
For me, just before when Edge challenged for the Undertaker for the streak, that when it kind of made sense to me. I was like, you'd rather try and beat the Undertaker than you would go for a championship, especially in 2008, 2009, that kind of era, because he was just the biggest name.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially when he was wrestling like 3 times a month. You'd see him every Friday wrestle, and then you'd understand how amazing it was that he just kept the streak, especially when you're a gullible kid. You think he's untouchable.
I think definitely he was like one of the MVPs of the era, along with John Cena, who delivered countless good performances during that time. Became a backbone, and along with people like Randy Orton too, who had mixed kind of matches all over the place. But we're going to talk about one of the ones which I know you have a different opinion on, which is good, which is fine, what we like, called talking crap. At the end of the 20s came the 2 matches that took place at 28 and 29 between The Rock and John Cena, once in a lifetime and twice in a lifetime, I guess.
Twice in a lifetime.
That began at WrestleMania 27, and it was quite unique, this, because obviously I don't really think since WrestleMania 4 had we seen a feud basically last a year. So obviously WrestleMania 4 to 5 with the Mega Maniacs, and obviously the breakup of that, going into WrestleMania 28, with the main event being announced, a year previously. The spectacle of that match, I think, is huge. I know you're not a fan too much of the matches, though.
I'm not.
Why?
So don't get me wrong. The first one, the once in a lifetime, was amazing. It did what it wanted to do. It made people who wasn't a fan of The Rock because they weren't around, like myself, understand the hype of The Rock. Because this is my controversial opinion. I don't like The Rock.
Okay.
I understand it. I understand why people like it. And I've been recently watching some of the Attitude Era stuff. in lockdown, just trying to pass the time. And I get why people like it, but I think a lot of people who are like my age, who started watching wrestling a good 4 years after the last time you saw The Rock, I think a lot of them don't understand The Rock, but they don't want to say it, because especially when it comes to in-ring, The Rock is just not on anyone's level. I think The Rock is only reason The Rock's at that level is because he had feuds with people like Triple H. He had feuds with people like Stone Cold, who elevated his in-ring ability. But watching him against Cena, it just didn't click for me. I don't know. I never understood him. I never bought him as the most electrifying man. It just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, like, I think obviously when you started watching wrestling, obviously later than his peak, and obviously, this is something which will come up for people that are younger than yourself. More people now are known through his movies, and so it will be a case of, was he a movie star that wrestled? There'd be that real conversation happening with some people. We don't. Was he making movies and just went to wrestle?
I know people who don't know he was a wrestler.
This was obviously it was part of like a comeback that he had, and it was interesting that he was a part of WrestleMania for more years on the trot as a part timer than he was when he was a full time wrestler, because he appeared in one capacity or another at WrestleMania for, I think it was 5 years in a row. Final question then to you. Out of this kind of period, then, so let's basically include anything from 22. Well, let's say from 23. So apart from the matches you mentioned, what is kind of your favourite match from 23 up to about 29?
Okay, well, I'll just say the Undertaker Shawn Michael matches are obviously everyone knows their matches, so I won't hype onto those. But I would say, I'd say John Cena Michaels.
Very good match, that. It felt really big, that as well. Obviously,
it felt massive.
Like
when I watched that match, I must have been just turning 8. So this is when I was fully WWE on the walls, WWE bed. Everything was John Cena. Everything was Edge, John Cena. Everything, like, I had the merch, everything. So I was proper watching wrestling every day. And that match happened, and I watched that match, and I was just like, Shawn Michaels is the man.
Yeah, and obviously it was 20 years since WrestleMania 3, and obviously, that big moment being crowned, or 20 years since, and obviously they haven't gone back to arenas since then. And with the exception of obviously the COVID time, which obviously we have to accept them. That happened obviously last year, 36, but it's been stadiums. Do you think it should always be stadiums?
No, I hate stadiums.
The noise escapes. The noise escapes, isn't it?
It feels, my favourite WrestleManias to look at are always the Madison Square Garden ones.
Really?
Just because I just want to be there.
Yeah, it's got that.
If you look at the ones recently, it's like, it's more likely that I can get a ticket, but would I want to sit half a mile away from the ring? Like, you can barely see when you're, 100 meters from the ring. You can barely see what's happening. So, but when you watch them Madison Square Garden, like, I think it was 21, the last one that was in Madison Square Garden, you watch it and 20. It's just like, was it 20?
Yeah.
You watch it and it's like, I just want to be there, because you can hear everything, every gasp of the crowd, every boo, every cheer. I think that's really what wrestling is to me. Up close, personal, kind of grubby. Those big, massive stadiums, like, I get why they'll never go back to small arenas, because they can pack out. What was the attendance? 95,000.
93 at WrestleMania 3, allegedly. Or we've back to allegedly.
Yeah.
Not like
Allegedly.
It's 70,000 plus. These events.
Yeah, and obviously there's no reason for them to go back to arenas. But if I had it my way, then all the WrestleManias will be in small arenas where you proper have to, like, try to get tickets.
But right, look, we cover a lot there. Thanks for joining us, and yeah.
My pleasure.
So Jack Walker ending there with some very kind of interesting comments regarding the once in a lifetime matches. Obviously, these were massive matches that took place at WrestleMania 28 and 29, a 3-year program really that they worked. Obviously, all the way from 27, with the feud going all the way up to the first one, and then the rematch the year after. What are the big matches you think we could see in the future at WrestleMania taking place?
Ooh, the big matches we could see in the future. I mean,
Are there many left?
What, many manias left? Or many big matches left?
Are there many big matches, within the company? Are there many big, when you look at a card, are there many big names that you can go, oh, wow, I want to see that again. I want to see that.
If you're talking like old guy versus old guy, probably not. But if you look at maybe an NXT rookie taking on an Attitude Era star, possibly. Because I think the issue we're having at the moment is, as much as I love Undertaker and Goldberg, them having a match so late in their life was possibly the worst decision WWE ever made for them. But that being said, I think they need a younger talent that can help them out and carry the match a bit more. Because although Goldberg is in amazing shape for his age, you're still going to need that younger talent that can go the distance. But on the topic of Goldberg, I wouldn't mind seeing Matt Riddle finally have a match with Goldberg. Like, Riddle's been begging for it for like over a year now.
The tension between those two.
So seeing that match, I don't even think it'll be a match. It'll just be Goldberg beating the shit out of Riddle.
Yeah, I mean, he's spoken very openly that he never wants to work with them. So has Brock Lesnar. They both said that it's never happening. I think, I guess they'd have to get to a level where they've got a star, of their own that can face someone outside. Like, I guess, if they can.
I thought of a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Lesnar versus Lashley.
Well, yeah, that wasn't my thing. I think that is the last big match they can do in the, from what they've got at the moment. I think, obviously, they will most likely revisit Cena versus Orton. I think the next big one, this is my thing, I think the next big one is going to be John Cena, 16-time world champion, against Randy Orton, 16-time and current world champion. There we have it. Can Cena break the record and most likely then retire afterwards?
Cena's basically retired. Like, he's unofficially retired.
Yeah,
you only see him at Mania now.
Well,
and this year, apparently, we're not going to see him.
Yeah, it's mad though what he's done. I mean, he probably needs an entire episode dedicated. To be fair, but I don't think we can just go. Okay, we're on one.
The C Nation episode.
But yeah, this next era of Mania is gonna be interesting because Mania is now a brand, isn't it, Josh? I think it's now a brand. It's now
pretty much its own.
It sells out, by itself. It is kind of just known as the wrestling show. To no matter who you ask, they know it's the biggest wrestling show on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I spoke to Lewis Barrett about what can Mania do going forward. Take a look. Okay, thanks for joining me, Lewis. So we're going to be discussing kind of WrestleMania of the futures. But before that, what's your favourite WrestleMania moment or match?
Oh, okay. So my earliest memory, and it's a good memory to start with, my very first WrestleMania that I remember watching was Mania 17. That was headlined by Rock Austin. I believe that was the Hardys, Dudleys, Edge and Christian TLC tag title match. And it's still probably regarded to this day, and we're at the 20th anniversary of that one, as pretty still to this day one of the better WrestleManias they've ever done. Still, that was my earliest memory of it. So for me, the TLC match stood out as that was by far the best match on that card, and that was an awesome card as well.
Yeah, it was stacked.
Other memories that stick out to mine is obviously when I went to Mania 30 myself. I won't bat on about it too much, so I know you had to discuss that with a few guests now. But it's an atmosphere. What I will say though is the atmosphere for like a Mania is something to experience. That's if that's your thing. In terms of like traveling out there to do it, then I would fully recommend you do it. As a guy who's an aspiring wrestler as myself, it lit a fire under me personally to think, this is kind of what I want, or at least take this as far as it can possibly go, because it was almost a dream scenario. Like, that's what you kind of train and learn your bumps to do. Like, it's 80,000 people with a dream opponent the other corner to you, and the eyes of the world are on you. In terms of growing up, and where I kind of fell out in love with it as my advances in secondary school were happening, so I might be out of touch with some of the bits around 08 time. So other moments that stick out to me would be Rock Hogan, Rock Cena, all those the 2 or 3 times that's happened now.
Yeah, it's a spectacle of some of these matches that happen, I think. Like, obviously, Austin and The Rock, like, just had this massive kind of spectacle about them at WrestleMania 17. It was such a well-built match. And obviously, like you say, Rock and Cena, a few years later, did similar, where it was just such the spectacle of the match was more important than the actual match and what went on. And it's interesting that you mentioned, once you're seeing it live, it kind of ignites that fire. I think it's the same for a lot of people, because as much as you can kind of slag off the booking decisions, and obviously some of the wrestlers on the show, once you're kind of there and watching WWE live, they put on a spectacle like none other. Like, it is like the creme de la creme, and it makes you think, I want to be a part of this. It's good that
I referenced Mania 30 again, and obviously one that sticks out in my mind is obviously the Bray Wyatt John Cena match. And as much as there's a lot of it was so conflicting as to who they should and shouldn't have won that match, but despite no doubt the backstage politics that must have gone on behind that, and the mistakes that made people thought that was made, particularly with the streak match as well. When you do just sort of strip away all of that, and it's just a pure spectacle of this guy versus this guy, and this is the setting, and this is what's just being booked. And then when you are just, like I said, just that in awe of it, but who's to say, afterwards, or the participants, how they feel and what they're going through is just so we're just not conscious. We are oblivious to those kind of things. It's mad how what we deem as important is just, it won't be for them, but in that moment, even they're like, no, we've got to make this work, because it's the perfect setting, really.
Yeah, great. Obviously, going forward at WrestleMania, obviously the last kind of couple, including this year's 37, last year's obviously been affected by the pandemic, and in differing ways. Obviously, we are getting fans for WrestleMania 37, which is cool. But something which has come up quite often, we're going to discuss now, is the 2-night thing. Should WrestleMania going forward continue as a 2-night event? If so, why? If not, again, why?
I'm going to say short answer is yes. I like to see that going forward, and I think it's because there is so much on the line. It just can't all be fit in one night. And as a business, I think you can make 2 equally strong cards now, because there's 2 lots of world titles, 2 lots of tags, and 2 lots of one special attraction like a Hell in a Cell one night and something else another night, and you can literally just really break it up now. So as a business, it's so clever, because it's doubled the demand and double the event that we ultimately get. And then again, you got to think business. It's 2 lots of tickets. It's 2 lots of everything.
Yeah.
But because of the importance and the highlight of equal importance of men's and women's matches now, it's not just a main event now. They are pretty much booking 3 main events if you think about it, because they always keep saying the women's match is the main event, and then the 2 lots of men's world titles, that's the main event.
Yeah, I think also the problem I think that we're having, I think, is the Manias of the network era, so to speak, so 31 through to about 35 before the pandemic hit, every year was getting longer. You know, it was getting, and I think the fans and us watching at home, obviously, especially in the UK, having to, you know, I remember one year we watched it, and I think, you know, you legitimately left my house when it was daylight again. People were going to work, and you was coming home from watching WrestleMania. And I think they were just getting increasingly too long. But I think the 2 nights thing works quite well. And another thing which is quite interesting in the future, like obviously the pandemic has slowed down travel, halted travel really, hasn't it, worldwide? But, you know, is there still a possibility of a UK WrestleMania, do you think?
It seems more likely now because of AEW. And here's my answer. Here's my rationale. Because of AEW's large fan base in the UK, because obviously they are on a free-to-air network, and the fact that the owners have ties with Fulham Football Club, and the fact they keep saying we could just run a pay-per-view on Fulham Football Club's pitch, it's just like the need to win the competition over here, as the UK is obviously is wrestling's second biggest market behind the US. It's pushing towards that way. I read something, again, you might have to quote me on this. I'm reading some dirt sheet that they were considering holding a SummerSlam at Wembley Stadium if it wasn't for the pandemic, if AEW did run Fulham Football Club.
Yeah, I remember reading a few reports about other pay-per-views, but WrestleMania in the UK seems to always be kind of pushed out of the way, it seems. I mean, the main argument,
in my opinion,
argument of obviously, if you know, there's a pay-per-view over here, Americans, they'll be able to watch it at an awkward time, you know, for them. And obviously, if they're going to show it at a normal time, obviously there'll be spoilers. The event would already have aired. But surely we're past that now.
Ultimately, I don't think you can upset the number one target audience. That's why my answer would be WrestleMania specifically no. I just think that you can't upset the main audience too much.
SummerSlam as well next year would be the 30 years since obviously SummerSlam 92 over in it. So I guess, you know, anniversaries, that could be quite handy. But I think WrestleMania definitely, like, you know, if it isn't become a bigger thing even more now in the next kind of decade, I guess, I think the 2 night thing would definitely work. And obviously the fact that the company spotlight talent from NXT, female talent. So thanks, Lewis, for talking about those WrestleMania moments, and let's see what happens to WrestleMania in the future. So yeah, that was Lewis Barrett's thoughts about what could happen in the future at WrestleMania. Loads of things that could happen, to be fair, as we enter the next decade of WrestleMania. I'm afraid that is all we've got time for, though. We do hope we get a chance to go back and, if you haven't already, watch the first part that's on our YouTube channel and the second part over on Facebook. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, I've been Lucas Jackson, joined by J. Josh Porter. And please, guys, enjoy the show. That's all I'm asking. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the spectacle and the fun and the excitement that is WrestleMania 37 taking place this weekend. Thank you, everyone. Ta-ra for now.
Take it easy.